Seth and Harry were brothers, but that bond was shattered by a tragedy they never saw coming. When they were just kids, their parents died. No explanation, no warning, just a sudden, gaping hole in their lives that would never truly heal. Seth, the older brother, couldn't handle the grief. He needed someone to blame, and he found his target in Harry. Harry was always buried in his books, always focused on school, and in Seth's eyes, that meant he wasn't there when it mattered most. "You weren't there," Seth had screamed, his voice raw with anger, drowning out the shared sorrow. That single accusation was a hammer blow that broke their relationship. They stopped talking, drifted apart, and became strangers living under the same roof, until they weren't even doing that anymore. Years passed. Seth, now 25, was still searching for something, a purpose, a way to channel the anger that never left him. He found it in a scientific experiment, a dangerous gamble, promising to create stronger, better humans. He volunteered, desperate for a change. But the experiment went horribly wrong. Gamma rays, a torrent of green energy, flooded his body, destroying the lab and everything in it. When Seth finally came to, dazed and disoriented, he saw his reflection in a puddle on the floor. His eyes, they flashed a vibrant, menacing green. Seth had become something else. He had become the Hulk. At first, there was only fear. Fear of the monster inside him, the uncontrollable rage. But over time, he learned. He learned to control the transformation, to call upon the beast only when he willed it. He found a new family in the Resistance, a group dedicated to protecting the world from the shadows. For the first time since his parents died, Seth felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging. But peace, as he knew all too well, was fragile. During a mission, the Resistance uncovered a shadowy organization conducting horrific experiments on human subjects. As Seth sorted through their files and security footage, a familiar name stopped him cold. Harry's brother. The video feed showed a man named Samuel Stearns preparing a new serum, one even more potent than the one that had created the Hulk. And its intended recipient was Harry. "What?" Seth shouted, the word catching in his throat. The team looked at him, confused, until Seth finally choked out the truth. "That's my brother." The Resistance leader immediately asked if he could contact him, warn him. Seth's shoulders slumped. "I haven't spoken to him in years," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "We ended on bad terms. I don't think he'd even want to see me." The leader placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "He's your brother," she said, her voice steady, "and he's in danger." That was all he needed to hear. Seth agreed to go alone. A quick search delivered another shock. Harry wasn't just a successful academic anymore. He was the President of the United States. Without a moment's hesitation, Seth headed for the White House. The reunion was as cold as he'd feared. When Harry saw him standing there after all those years, his face was a mask of confusion and anger. "Why are you here?" Harry's voice was ice. Seth didn't waste time. He told him everything about Samuel Stearns, about the new serum designed to turn him into a monster. Harry just chuckled. A bitter, dismissive sound. "Don't worry," he said, waving a hand. "I'll be fine." A terrible suspicion crept into Seth's mind. "You took it, didn't you?" Harry froze. The silence was deafening. "Leave," he ordered. Seth stood his ground. "After everything, you just took it. What were you thinking? Innocent people could get hurt." Harry finally exploded. "The people who care about me. I lost everything, and I was the one you blamed for our parents' death." As his eyes flashed a terrifying blood red. For just a split second, Seth saw it, and his heart sank. "This serum isn't a cure, Harry," he pleaded. "It's a curse, just like mine." That broke him. Harry's anger deflated, replaced by a desperate vulnerability. He admitted the truth. He was dying. He thought the serum was his only hope, a second chance at life. Overwhelmed with guilt, Seth stepped forward, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "They wouldn't have wanted this," he said softly. "We were a family." But the gentle touch was like a spark on gasoline. Harry's fist connected with Seth's jaw. Where was that when you abandoned me? He screamed. His eyes weren't just flashing red anymore. They were burning. His body began to twist and contort, growing into a crimson behemoth. The Red Hulk was born. As his brother transformed, Seth activated his comms, sending the live footage to the Resistance. What followed was pure chaos. Fire, destruction, the screams of terrified civilians filled the air as the Resistance scrambled to evacuate everyone they could. Seth had no choice. He let his own monster out. The Hulk roared to life, and the two brothers, now hulking titans of rage, clashed in an earth-shattering battle. Their fight leveled city blocks, culminating in a final, devastating blow that sent both of them hurling into a massive crater. When the dust began to settle, Seth had reverted to his human form, unconscious. Harry, however, remained the Red Hulk. The Resistance leader managed to pull Seth from the rubble, but just as she did, Harry emerged, roaring with fury. Despite his injuries, Seth struggled to his feet. "Help the others," he told her, his voice strained. "Trust me." This time, he didn't transform. He walked toward his brother. Vulnerable and human, he spoke from the heart. "This isn't the way," he began, his voice clear and steady amidst the destruction. "I'm sorry. For everything, I was wrong." As he spoke, a strange thing happened. Cherry blossom petals, carried on the wind from a nearby park, began to drift through the smoky air. "Look around you, Harry," Seth continued, his voice filled with a pain that went deeper than any physical injury. "Do you really want this world to fall into chaos?" "Harry." Posed. He watched the petals dance in the air, catching one in his massive, red hand. He looked at the fragile flower, then at the ruins he had created. The rage in his eyes began to flicker and fade. Slowly, the crimson giant shrank, the monstrous form melting away, until only Harry remained, collapsing to the ground. "I'm sorry, brother," he whispered, before finally losing consciousness. In the aftermath, Harry was taken into custody, held in a facility with power dampeners to ensure the Red Hulk never returned. A few days later, Seth went to visit him. "Why are you here?" Harry asked, his voice weak. "After everything." Seth looked at his brother, the years of anger and distance finally gone. He answered simply, "Because you're my brother." In that small room, they found forgiveness. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the past, but it was honest. Harry accepted his fate, understanding that some things can't be undone. The world hadn't been saved without a cost, but through the fire and the fury, two brothers had finally found what they thought was lost forever. Family. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video.